It was the kind of day that could break even the strongest spirits. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the busy streets, while the wind carried with it the faintest whisper of change. For Maria, a woman in her 40s, the world outside seemed like a distant dream, one she could no longer reach. She had been homeless for almost 2 years now, after losing everything: her job, her home, and most painfully, her sense of self-worth. Every morning, Maria wandered through the streets of downtown, hoping for a few spare coins, or maybe a warm meal from someone willing to spare it. The days had blurred together, one indistinguishable from the other, each more hopeless than the last. She had tried finding work, but her appearance, dirty, unkempt, and worn, made it nearly impossible. No one seemed to care about the person she used to be, only the ragged woman she had become. But today, as Maria walked down a narrow alley, something caught her eye. It was a small leather wallet lying discarded on the ground, almost as if it had been dropped carelessly in the rush of the busy street. At first, Maria hesitated. She didn't want to draw attention to herself, or get caught in something that didn't belong to her. But the glint of something shiny peeking out from the wallet's flap was too much to resist. She knelt down and picked it up, opening it cautiously. Inside, there were a few $100 bills, a credit card, and a driver's license that read, Thomas Blake. He was a man in his late 40s, dressed in a suit. The wallet looked far too expensive for someone like her to have found. Maria's heart raced as she realized the extent of what she was holding. This was someone's life, a millionaire's life, sitting in the palm of her hand. She quickly stuffed the wallet into the pocket of her jacket, unsure of what to do next. She had heard stories of people finding lost wallets, but she knew better than to get caught in something that could end badly. But the temptation of what was inside was overwhelming. Maybe this could change things for her. Maybe, just maybe, it could give her the fresh start she desperately needed. For the next few hours, Maria sat in a park, staring at the wallet, torn between returning it and keeping it. Her stomach growled with hunger, and the weight of her situation pressed down on her more heavily than ever. But then something inside her shifted. She couldn't do it. She couldn't steal from someone, no matter how hard her life had become. The right thing to do, she realized, was to return the wallet. But as she tried to figure out where to return it, her thoughts began to spiral. She didn't know how to find this Thomas Blake. How would she even approach him? What would he think of her? Someone like her, trying to return something so valuable. Her mind raced with worry and doubt. What would happen if she didn't do the right thing? Would she stay stuck in this hopeless cycle forever? She decided to take a deep breath and set out to find the man's address. She walked past storefronts and crowded cafes, clutching the wallet tightly, determined to make it right. Hours later, Maria found herself standing in front of a sleek glass building, a far cry from the alleyways she had been used to. She hesitated at the door, her hands trembling. Was she really going to do this? She had been to buildings like this before, but never with something so valuable. She was an intruder in a world she didn't belong to. But Maria pushed her doubts aside and stepped inside. She approached the receptionist, her voice shaky as she asked if she could speak with Thomas Blake. The receptionist eyed her curiously, but directed her to the elevator, and Maria pressed the button with a sense of nervous anticipation. As the elevator doors opened on the top floor, Maria's heart pounded. She had no idea what to expect. Would he be kind? Would he call security on her for simply walking into his life? But when she reached his office, a surprising sense of calm washed over her. Thomas Blake was not what she had imagined. He was sitting behind a large desk, the kind that looked like it belonged in a magazine ad. He wore a navy blue suit and had an air of quiet confidence about him. As he looked up from his papers and saw Maria standing there, His expression was one of curiosity, but not disdain. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice soft but clear. Maria swallowed hard, her throat dry. "I found something of yours," she managed, pulling the wallet from her jacket. His eyes flickered with recognition when he saw the leather wallet. His expression shifted, becoming more guarded, but he didn't immediately turn her away. Instead, he gestured for her to sit, and Maria did, unsure of what to say next. "Where did you find this?" Thomas asked, his voice tinged with suspicion, but there was something else there, something that made Maria think he wasn't entirely upset. I found it in the street," she replied, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to keep it. It's yours." Thomas took a deep breath, leaning back in his chair as he processed the situation. He seemed to be measuring her, deciding what to make of this woman who had found his wallet and walked all the way here to return it. "Thank you for bringing this back," he said, after a long pause, his voice softening. "It's rare to find someone who does the right thing these days." Maria smiled faintly, feeling a warmth in her chest. She had done the right thing, but as Thomas spoke to her, she realized something else. There was something in his eyes, a kindness, perhaps even a curiosity, that made her feel seen for the first time in a long while. Thomas leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Can I offer you something to eat? You've been very kind to return this." Maria hesitated, unsure of how to respond. It felt wrong to accept anything from him, but hunger gnawed at her, and she was too tired to argue. "Just for a moment," she said quietly. As they sat together, sharing a meal, Maria realized that this meeting, the unlikely encounter between a homeless woman and a millionaire, might just be the beginning of something that would change her life forever. Maria sat across from Thomas at a sleek glass table in his office. The space was filled with natural light streaming through the tall windows, casting shadows on the polished floors. She felt out of place, the stark contrast between her worn clothes and the pristine surroundings making her acutely aware of her status. It was a world she had never belonged to, and she had almost forgotten what it felt like to be treated with respect. Thomas had ordered lunch for them both, and as they ate in silence, Maria found herself growing increasingly uncomfortable. She hadn't eaten a real meal in so long, and the food in front of her tasted like nothing short of a luxury. She chewed slowly, not wanting to seem too eager, but she couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that she didn't belong in this world. Thomas, however, seemed unfazed. He didn't act as though he were above her or pity her. He simply treated her as another human being. She could tell he was trying to understand the situation, his eyes never leaving hers, as if searching for something. Maria couldn't quite figure out what that something was, but it unsettled her. After a few moments of awkward silence, Thomas cleared his throat, breaking the tension. "I have to admit, I didn't expect to meet someone like you today," he said, his voice calm but sincere. "Most people would have kept the wallet, and I wouldn't blame them. Life's tough." Maria looked down at her hands, suddenly self-conscious. She had heard people talk like this before, but it was always in a different context, usually with a hint of judgment or worse, indifference. But not Thomas. There was something about his tone that made her feel as though he saw her for who she truly was, not the circumstances that defined her. "I couldn't keep it," she replied quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been through a lot, but I don't want to become someone who just takes from others. I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to make things right." Thomas nodded slowly, clearly contemplating her words. There was a pause before he spoke again. "What are you doing now? Are you working? Do you have any place to stay?" Maria hesitated. She had been staying in shelters, moving from one to the next, but never feeling truly safe or at ease. Jobs had been hard to come by. No one hired a woman who looked like her, and even if they did, she didn't have the clothes or the confidence to show up to a job interview and make a real impression. "I've been trying to find work," she admitted, her voice dropping. "But it's not easy. People don't want to hire someone like me. I don't have the right clothes, the right look. I'm invisible to most." Thomas leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "I don't think you're invisible," he said quietly. "You found my wallet and returned it without hesitation. That says a lot about who you are." Maria didn't know how to respond to that. She wanted to believe him, but self-doubt always crept in. It had been so long since anyone had treated her like she mattered. She had nearly forgotten what it felt like to be seen. "I'm not sure what to do next," she said softly. "I don't have any family, no real support system. I've just been trying to survive." For a moment, Thomas didn't say anything. He simply looked at her, and for the first time, Maria could see the weight in his eyes, something that seemed to mirror her own struggles. He wasn't some untouchable millionaire, she realized. He was a man who had worked hard for everything he had. A man who had his own battles, his own burdens. "I can help you," Thomas said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Not just with a job, but with a place to stay. I have connections, and I'm sure we can figure something out. But it has to be your decision. I'm not asking you to do this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because I believe you deserve better." Maria's heart skipped a beat. Her first instinct was to reject the offer. It felt too much like charity, and she didn't want to feel indebted to anyone. But as she looked into Thomas's eyes, something shifted. It wasn't pity she saw. It was something far more genuine. He wasn't offering help out of obligation. He was offering it because he saw potential in her, a potential she hadn't seen in herself for a long time. "I don't know what to say," Maria whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I've never had someone offer me something like this before. I don't want to take advantage of you." Thomas smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling slightly. "You're not taking advantage of me," he said gently. "You're giving me a chance to help, and I'm not doing this out of some sense of obligation. I'm doing it because I want to, because I think you deserve more than just surviving. I think you can live again." Maria felt a lump form in her throat. His words were like a lifeline thrown to her, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like there might actually be a way out of the darkness she had been living in. "I don't know if I can believe it," she said softly, "but I'll try." Thomas nodded, understanding her hesitation. "That's all I ask." For the next hour, they talked about her life, her struggles, and what she hoped for in the future. Thomas didn't rush her, didn't push her to make any decisions. He simply listened, as though he genuinely cared. Maria felt the weight of years of loneliness begin to lift, if only for a moment. She realized in that moment that there was something more to this chance encounter than just a lost wallet being returned. It felt like the beginning of something that could change both of their lives forever. As the conversation came to an end, Thomas stood and extended his hand. "I'd like to help you, Maria. I don't know what the future holds, but I promise you this, I won't let you fall through the cracks." Maria took his hand, feeling the warmth of his grip and the sincerity in his words. It was an unfamiliar sensation, this feeling of hope, but for the first time in a long time, she dared to believe in it. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice almost breaking. "Thank you for seeing me." Thomas smiled, a genuine smile that seemed to reach his eyes. "You're welcome, and I'll see you again soon." As she left his office that day, Maria couldn't help but feel a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change. The days that followed were a blur for Maria. She had never imagined that a single decision, a single act of kindness, could shift the direction of her life so completely. Thomas had kept his word. He had helped her get a job at one of his company's smaller branches. Nothing glamorous, but it was a start. She was cleaning offices, washing floors, and organizing supplies. But it was honest work, and for the first time in a long time, Maria felt proud of herself. Every morning, she woke up early, the rhythm of a new routine giving her a sense of purpose. For years, she had been living without direction, drifting from one day to the next, consumed by the struggle to survive. Now she was moving forward, even if it was just a small step. It wasn't easy. She was still living in a small shared apartment in a neighborhood that was far from ideal, and her new job barely covered the bills. There were days when Maria doubted if this was all she could ever hope for. The old insecurities crept back in, wondering if she deserved any of this, wondering if she was just fooling herself by believing she could actually rebuild her life. But there was one thing that kept her going: Thomas. He had been more than just a benefactor to her. He had become a constant presence in her life. He had made it clear from the beginning that he didn't want anything from her, that this was not some transactional arrangement. And yet, over the past few weeks, Maria couldn't deny the pull she felt towards him. It wasn't just gratitude. No, it was something deeper, something that confused her, something she didn't fully understand. There was a kindness in Thomas that transcended his wealth, his status, his position in life. He saw her as an equal, not someone to pity. That was rare, and it made Maria question everything she thought she knew about herself and about life. On the days when she had time off, Thomas would invite her to join him for a coffee or lunch. They would talk about everything and nothing: his work, her progress, the world around them. Slowly, a connection began to grow between them. There was no rush, no pressure. They simply enjoyed each other's company, and for the first time in a long time, Maria felt like she was being seen for who she really was, not just the circumstances she had come from. One afternoon, as they sat at a small cafe near his office, sipping on coffee, Maria found herself staring at him more than usual. He had that calm presence about him, someone who had lived a full life and had the wisdom to show for it. But there was also something vulnerable beneath the surface. She could see it in the way he looked at her, in the way he paid attention when she spoke. It was as though he, too, was searching for something he hadn't found yet. "Are you sure you're doing okay?" Thomas asked, breaking her from her thoughts. His voice was gentle, his brow furrowed with concern. "I know this is a big change, and I just want to make sure you're not overwhelmed." Maria blinked, unsure of what to say. She had never been good at accepting help, at admitting when things weren't okay. But with Thomas, it felt different. She didn't feel weak for being vulnerable. "I'm managing," she said, her voice steady. "I'm still adjusting, but it feels good to be doing something, even if it's not perfect." Thomas nodded, his eyes locking with hers, in a way that made her heart skip a beat. There was something unspoken in that look, something that left Maria feeling both exposed and protected all at once. It was as if he was offering her a space to be herself, to be real, without the weight of her past holding her down. "I admire you, Maria," Thomas said, quietly, leaning back in his chair. "You don't let your past define you. I don't know if I could be as strong as you if I were in your shoes." Maria's heart tightened at his words. She had never considered herself strong, not until now. It had always been about survival, about pushing through each day, not about strength or resilience. But hearing him say it made her wonder if she had something more inside her than she'd ever realized. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "That means more to me than you know." Thomas smiled, his gaze softening. He reached across the table, his hand resting on hers for a brief moment. It was such a small gesture, but it sent a ripple of warmth through her. She didn't pull away, didn't shy from the touch. For the first time in a long time, Maria allowed herself to feel something she had buried deep inside her for years: hope. But as the days went on, Maria couldn't ignore the pull she felt toward Thomas. She hadn't asked for this. She didn't expect to fall for him, but it was happening, and it scared her. On one particularly quiet evening, after a long day of work, Maria found herself walking back to her apartment, the weight of her thoughts heavier than usual. She couldn't ignore it anymore, the way her heart quickened when she saw Thomas, the way she couldn't stop thinking about him when they were apart. As she rounded the corner toward her building, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, surprised to see a message from Thomas. "I'm thinking of you. I hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you need anything." She stared at the screen, a swirl of emotions flooding through her. It wasn't just a message from a friend. It was a message from someone who cared, someone who was offering her more than just financial help. He was offering something deeper, something that Maria wasn't sure she was ready for, but she couldn't deny it any longer. She had feelings for him, and she didn't know if that was a mistake or if this was the start of something beautiful. As the night grew darker, Maria stood on the sidewalk, her heart torn between the uncertainty of what might happen next and the hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found something worth holding on to. She typed a reply, her fingers trembling slightly. "Thank you, Thomas. I'm okay, for now." But in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the thought that this simple exchange might be the first step towards something far bigger than either of them could have ever imagined. The days that followed felt like a quiet storm brewing inside Maria. Her job was going well, and her financial situation, though far from perfect, had improved. But it was her emotions that were harder to navigate. The more time she spent with Thomas, the more she found herself torn between what felt right and what felt dangerous. She hadn't been in a relationship in years, not since her life had spiraled out of control. Love had seemed like a distant luxury for people who had the privilege of stability. For Maria, survival had been the only priority, but here she was, caught in the grip of an emotion she had long buried beneath layers of hardship and cynicism. She couldn't explain it, this pull she felt towards Thomas, the way her heart fluttered when he called her, the way she smiled to herself when she thought about their conversations. It scared her. It scared her because she had nothing to offer him, nothing that could compare to the life he had. He was rich, successful, and had a world of opportunity at his fingertips. What was she? A woman with a past too painful to relive and a future too uncertain to contemplate. The following weekend, Thomas invited her to dinner at a restaurant she'd only ever heard of in passing, expensive, trendy, and seemingly out of her league. He insisted that she pick the place, and though she hesitated, she finally agreed. She knew he would pay for it, but the idea of dining in such a lavish place made her feel like an imposter, like she was playing a role she didn't belong in. As they sat down at the table, Maria felt the weight of the silverware, the polished glasses, and the crisp, starched napkins. Everything felt so foreign, and yet Thomas seemed at ease, his smile warm, his presence calming. It was clear that he enjoyed her company, that he appreciated her for who she was, not for what she had. "You look beautiful tonight," Thomas said, his voice low and sincere. "I'm glad you agreed to come." Maria blinked, taken off guard by the compliment. She hadn't heard someone say that to her in so long. She was used to the stares of strangers, the pity of people who saw her as nothing more than a homeless woman with no future. But Thomas didn't look at her like that. He didn't see her past. He saw her, Maria, the person. "Thank you," she replied softly, her heart quickening. "I wasn't sure about this place, but it's nice. Fancy, though. Not really my style." Thomas laughed, the sound light and easy. "I thought I'd treat you to something special. You've been working hard, and you deserve it." Maria smiled, but her mind kept returning to the same question. Why was he doing this? What was he expecting in return? She had been taught all her life that people didn't give without wanting something in return. But every time she looked at Thomas, she saw no hidden agenda, just kindness, genuine kindness. As dinner progressed, the conversation flowed naturally. They talked about their childhoods, their dreams, and their struggles. It was one of those rare moments when they could speak openly without fear of judgment. Maria found herself laughing at his jokes, listening intently as he shared stories about his life, his work, his family. She wanted to know more about him, to understand what had made him the person he was. Eventually, the waiter brought over a dessert, a delicate chocolate mousse that looked too beautiful to eat. Thomas pushed it toward her with a smile. "Go ahead, I know you have a sweet tooth," he teased. Maria hesitated, glancing at the dessert before meeting his gaze. "I don't usually indulge in things like this," she said, trying to keep her tone light, "but it does look tempting." "Life's too short to deny yourself a little indulgence now and then," Thomas replied, his eyes softening. "You deserve it." She didn't know why, but hearing those words, simple and direct, made something shift inside her. Maybe it was his unspoken understanding of her struggle. Maybe it was his patience. Or maybe it was because for the first time in ages, she felt like she wasn't being judged. Maria picked up her spoon, taking a small bite. The rich velvety chocolate melted on her tongue, and for a moment she forgot about everything else. The worries, the insecurities, the weight of her past. It was just her, sitting across from Thomas, in that moment, enjoying the simple pleasure of dessert. "You know," Thomas said suddenly, his voice more serious than it had been all evening, "I've been thinking a lot about you lately." Maria's heart skipped a beat, her spoon pausing mid-air. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward slightly, his gaze fixed on hers. "I mean, I don't want to pressure you, but I'm starting to feel something, more than just friendship, and I think you feel it too." Maria's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe what he was saying. She had been afraid of this moment, afraid of admitting what she had felt for weeks, but hearing him say it made her heart race. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I wasn't expecting this. I'm not who you think I am, Thomas. I'm not a woman who belongs in your world." Thomas reached across the table, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm, steady. "I don't care about your past, Maria. I care about who you are now, who you've become, and if you'll let me, I want to be a part of your future." The words were so simple, yet they carried the weight of everything Maria had feared. She felt the tears welling up in her eyes, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she squeezed his hand, her heart opening in ways she had never allowed it to before. For a long moment, they sat there in silence, the world around them fading into the background. Maria knew that this was the moment that would change everything. She had spent so many years running from the idea of love, of connection, of trust. But now, here she was, faced with the possibility of something beautiful, something real. As they finished their dessert and walked out of the restaurant together, Maria realized that no matter where this path led, she was no longer walking it alone. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have the future she had always dreamed of. She didn't know where this was heading, but she knew she was ready to find out. Days turned into weeks, and Maria's life began to change in ways she couldn't have imagined. She continued her job at the small boutique, and with each passing day, she felt more and more confident. The steady rhythm of work, the kindness of the customers, and the support from Thomas made her feel like she was finally building a new foundation. But despite the progress, there was an underlying fear that haunted her, the fear of opening up too much, of trusting too deeply, and of losing what she had just begun to gain. Maria had never expected this turn in her life. When she found that wallet on the street, it felt like a twist of fate, an unexpected act of kindness from the universe. But as she spent more time with Thomas, she couldn't help but wonder if it was more than just chance. Was she meant to meet him? Was there a reason that, at the lowest point in her life, she had stumbled across a millionaire's wallet? And was it truly her past that made her doubt the future that was unfolding in front of her? As much as Maria enjoyed her time with Thomas, she couldn't ignore the discomfort she felt when she was in his world, his luxurious apartment, his upscale friends, and the places they went together. Sometimes, it felt like she was playing a role, pretending to be someone she wasn't. She often wondered if he was starting to regret spending so much time with her, a woman who had so little, who had made so many mistakes. One evening, as the two of them sat on the balcony of his apartment, looking out over the city skyline, the silence between them felt heavier than usual. Thomas had been distant lately, and Maria couldn't figure out why. Had he lost interest? Was he growing tired of the woman who had nothing to offer but gratitude and affection? Her heart ached at the thought. Finally, unable to stay silent any longer, Maria spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. "Thomas, is everything okay? You've seemed different lately." Thomas, who had been gazing at the view, turned toward her, his face softened by the glow of the city lights. "What do you mean?" Maria hesitated before continuing. "I don't know. It's just, I've noticed you've been pulling away, like you're not as engaged when we're together. I don't want to assume anything, but I can't help but feel like I'm not enough for you." The words left her mouth before she could stop them, and the instant they were out, she regretted them. She felt vulnerable, exposed, as though she had just admitted to the deepest insecurity she'd been hiding. Thomas's expression softened, and he gently reached out, taking her hand. "Maria, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything." Maria swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. "What do you mean?" Thomas took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "It's just that I've been so caught up in this whirlwind with you. And don't get me wrong, I care about you, more than I ever thought I could care about anyone. But sometimes I worry. I worry about what will happen when reality hits, when you realize I'm not some Prince Charming, and you realize that you have so much to offer the world beyond me. I don't want to be the one to hold you back." Maria's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this conversation, and it took her a moment to process what he had just said. She had always feared that her past, her homelessness, her struggles, would eventually push him away. But hearing him express his fears, his own vulnerability, opened something inside her. She wasn't the only one afraid. "Thomas," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I know I'm not who you expected. I know I don't fit into your world, but I don't want to hold back either. I don't want to live in fear anymore. Not of you, not of myself." Thomas's eyes softened as he listened to her words, and for the first time in a long while, Maria felt like she wasn't carrying all the weight of their relationship alone. "I'm scared too," she continued. "I've been so used to living in survival mode that I never thought I could deserve anything else. But when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally allowed to be myself, and I don't want to let that go." They sat in silence for a while, the night air cool against their skin. The city hummed around them, but in that moment, it felt like the rest of the world didn't exist. For the first time in years, Maria allowed herself to fully embrace the possibility of something more than survival, something that could be beautiful, something that could be real. The next day, Maria made a decision, She was going to stop running from her feelings, stop pushing away the good things that had come into her life. She had spent too much time looking at the past, at all the things she had lost, instead of focusing on what she had in front of her. She wasn't the same woman who had walked the streets of New York, desperate and hopeless. She had come a long way, and she had a future now, one that was filled with hope, possibility, and the potential for a love she never thought she could have. She met Thomas later that afternoon, and with a deep breath, she finally told him what was in her heart. "Thomas, I don't know what the future holds, and I'm not asking for anything except for us to be honest with each other. I want to try. I want to see where this goes. I don't know what will happen, but I know I don't want to let you go." Thomas smiled, his eyes glistening with emotion. "I don't want to let you go either." In that moment, Maria realized that no matter how uncertain the future was, she was no longer alone. She had found someone who saw her for who she truly was, not for the past she carried, not for the mistakes she had made, but for the woman she was becoming. And that was enough. Together, they walked into the unknown, hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time in years, Maria felt like she was truly living, not just surviving. Months passed, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. Maria continued to work at the boutique, but now it was more than just a job. It was a new chapter in her life. With every passing day, she felt herself growing stronger, more confident, and more capable of handling whatever life threw her way. She no longer looked over her shoulder, wondering if she was still stuck in the same dark, hopeless place she had once been. The future, once clouded with doubt, was now full of promise. Thomas had been true to his word, and their relationship blossomed in ways neither of them could have anticipated. They spent time together, not just in fancy restaurants or luxurious places, but in simple, everyday moments that felt just as significant. Whether it was taking a walk through the park, cooking dinner together, or laughing over a cup of coffee at a small cafe, their connection grew deeper, grounded in shared experiences and a growing understanding of one another. But with this newfound love came challenges. The differences in their worlds were hard to ignore, no matter how much they tried. Thomas's wealthy lifestyle sometimes felt like a distant dream to Maria. She often felt like an outsider, unsure of how to navigate the circles he moved in, parties, business events, and the lifestyle that came with it. And while Thomas never pressured her to change or adapt, Maria could sense his discomfort when they attended these events together. One night, they attended a gala thrown by one of Thomas's business partners. The glittering ballroom was filled with high-profile guests, dressed in evening gowns and tuxedos, all exchanging pleasantries over glasses of champagne. Maria, in a simple but elegant dress that Thomas had helped her pick out, felt like a fish out of water. She smiled politely at the people who approached them, but her mind kept wandering to the stark contrast between their lives. She could feel the weight of the stares, the unspoken judgment, and it made her uncomfortable. After a while, she excused herself from the crowd and stepped outside onto the balcony. The cool night air was a welcome relief from the stifling atmosphere inside. She leaned against the railing, taking in the view of the city below, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside her. It was here, in these quiet moments, that she allowed herself to reflect on everything that had brought her to this point. The hardships, the struggles, and the incredible transformation she had gone through. It wasn't long before Thomas joined her, a concerned look on his face. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft, but filled with concern. Maria turned to him, offering a faint smile. "I'm fine, just thinking." Thomas stepped closer, his hand gently touching hers. "You don't have to feel out of place, you know. I don't want you to ever feel like you're not enough. You are, more than you know." Maria met his gaze, her heart swelling with emotion. It's not that. It's just, I've spent so long being invisible, surviving. And now, in this world, I sometimes feel like I don't belong. Like I'm not worthy of this life. Of you." Thomas squeezed her hand, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "Maria, you've always been worthy. You didn't need money or status or anything else to be worthy of love and happiness. You've earned everything you have, and I see you for who you are. No masks, no pretenses, just you." Maria closed her eyes, letting his words wash over her. In that moment, the fear, the doubt, the insecurities, all faded away. For the first time, she realized that she didn't need to prove herself to anyone. She didn't need to fit into a world that didn't understand her. What mattered was the love they shared, the person she was becoming, and the future they were building together. As the night wore on, the gala continued inside, but Maria felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. She didn't need to pretend. She didn't need to conform to anyone's expectations. She just needed to be true to herself and to the love she shared with Thomas. The next morning, as Maria walked through the city streets, heading to work, she realized how far she had come. The world still seemed vast and overwhelming at times, but she no longer felt small in it. She had found a place for herself, a place not defined by her past, but by the strength she had discovered within. She had found love, not in the grand gestures or the perfect moments, but in the quiet, everyday acts of kindness and support that had shaped her life. As she arrived at the boutique, she smiled to herself, knowing that this was just the beginning. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to embrace it, no matter what came next. And as for her relationship with Thomas, it was no longer about the differences between their worlds. It was about the love that had grown between them, a love built on trust, vulnerability, and a shared desire to build a life together. They were no longer two people from different worlds. They were two souls who had found each other in the most unlikely of places and had transformed each other's lives in ways they never thought possible. Maria's story was one of hope, resilience, and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. From the streets to a life she never dreamed she could have, she had learned that it was never too late to start over, to embrace the unknown, and to believe in the possibilities of tomorrow. And so, as the days continued to unfold, Maria walked forward with courage in her heart, knowing that the best was yet to come. Thank you for joining us for this incredible journey. If you found inspiration in Maria's story, be sure to subscribe to Stories of Hope for more transformative real-life tales of hope, resilience, and the power of love. Your support helps us continue sharing these amazing stories with the world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our latest uploads.